Welcome to the SRS Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron J. Babyar, and I'm the Director of Support Raising Solutions. Whether you are a new ministry worker or a veteran looking to increase your competence and confidence, Support Raising Solutions seeks to bless you in your quest to be a spiritually healthy, vision-driven, and fully funded Great Commission worker. Once again today, I am thrilled to have another special guest in Callie Buccholtz. And Callie is a trainer and kind of coach and facilitator and all that good stuff of support raising for Teach Beyond. And she also has done a lot of work with Support Raising Solutions. And Callie, it's just awesome to have you back. Thanks for joining us again.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. Hey, I know that sometimes we run into situations where people find that the church that they grew up in won't support them, or perhaps it's a church that they've been attending for a few years, and they're feeling this call to missions, and they're not even sure what the process is, but they just assume they're going to help send them off into the wild blue yonder for Jesus, and then things aren't going so well. And I would say this is a frequent question that I hear probably almost on a monthly basis at a support raising boot camp. I don't know if you run into that as often in the Teach Beyond boot camps that you do, but I know it's enough of an issue that it'd just be wise for us to take some time today to have a conversation for the sake of the podcast, just to talk about what to do in those situations where you're trying to partner with a local church, perhaps even your own local church, and you're just not getting anywhere. So I figure I'd just kind of kick that to you first and just ask you if you know of any particular situations, maybe you experienced it yourself, or some of your friends have experienced something like that and might be willing to share a narrative while leaving out names.
Right. Protect the innocent.
Protect the guilty as well, please. Yes.
Oh, yeah, those two. Well, this definitely has actually been a huge part of my support raising process. I have never had a church support me on an ongoing basis. I've had several churches I've been a part of that are affirming my call to missions and are affirming that this is a good thing. And so I would say I have church support in that sense. But when you talk about churches covering a quarter of your budget or everything, right, that was never the case.
Right. And let me just interrupt you really quick and just say, we know this flies in the face of what might have been, at least in the U.S. over the last 50 to 100 years, traditional funding in missions. Because there was a time where the assumption, at least, was, and it is still in some circles, that you're going into missions because you have 2 or 3 local churches that are completely funding everything you're doing. And yet I know that's not the case in most situations anymore. And obviously you're one of those people where that hasn't been true of you either. And so
living the reality.
I just say this, we have people that listen to this podcast that are all over the map. We have people that they might actually be well funded from a local church. We might have people that they're not funded at all. And then I would say a majority of the people that I know who are fully funded usually have at least a couple churches on their teams, but it's not the majority of their actual support. So sorry to interrupt you with that, but I just wanted to say everybody's welcome to listen to this podcast regardless of your history. And also just to remind people that we think this podcast is a great help because of the conversation that we all get to learn from. And yet this podcast doesn't replace doing some good reading on the topic. Oh, yeah. And this podcast doesn't replace getting some good training, which, of course, we recommend SRS boot camps. There are other ways, perhaps, but that's what we recommend. So, okay, I kind of got out of order there, but let's circle back around. Tell me more about this process and maybe even some more of your story as far as trying to connect with and being supported in prayer and finances by local churches.
Yeah, well, I would say my experience was different than my experience growing up. My parents have been with Cru for almost 2 decades. And so I grew up traveling to a couple of our sending churches as a family and presenting in the small groups, presenting up front. So that was what my background was walking into missions. And so I was assuming that churches would play a big role. But kind of what the trend of churches is now in giving in general is people, especially younger generations, I should say, are trusting institutions less. So that includes churches, it includes general large organizations. So while I would say the generosity of Americans specifically, just it's where I'm a little more familiar, has not lessened at all. We're seeing people give to people more than people giving to larger entities.
Right. Right. Parenthetically, I have heard, and I have not done any actual studies on my own, so I suppose there would be a doctorate out there for someone if they wanted to do it. Maybe it's already been done and I haven't seen it. But the point is this: I've heard more than once that on average, most churches in the United States have seen a steady decline in their yearly giving towards missions to the tune of 3%.
Oof.
Again, don't hold me to the wall on that. I'm not sure where I got that stat, but I've heard it often enough that it's worth saying that there's probably needs to be more research done, or maybe somebody has done it, but it should at least give you pause and go, the trend for people giving it has changed, but also the trend of how churches support missionaries has changed. So obviously you helped to train hundreds of leaders. You might even be in the thousands at this point. I'm not sure where your numbers are at, but
I haven't counted.
What tell us some more about the things that you've learned and the things you've seen and those that you've encountered in this process, engaging with churches for the sake of raising their support.
Well, a big thing is, as churches might be experiencing a dip in giving, is I've seen them become very more focused in what they're willing to give their money towards.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about a very clear vision of these are the types of missionaries that we want to support. These are the types of projects. And so you really need to walk in that situation being aware of what the church cares about.
Mm-hmm.
If it is church planting, how does what you do connect with church planting?
Yeah.
And that's where a huge benefit comes from being a part of your organization, not just your little piece of it, but knowing what your larger big picture vision is.
Right. Right. Yeah. And where it fits. And by the way, I was told at one point by a church that I know and love and have had a lot of good history with that. And there was a time, this has changed since, but at the time I was told, well, no, we're not going to financially support you because you're not going to be living in this particular geography of the world. Mm-hmm. And I pointed out, I hope graciously, that I'm helping to send a lot of people to that geography in the world. And there was some pause for certain. And there was some rethinking done. And there was a time later when I was actually invited to be a part of that church's giving. But that was not one conversation one time. We're talking about a couple of years worth of conversations to see that change. So that's just a part about my experience. But as churches tell people no, though, let's kind of go that route for a minute, because we probably have some people listening to this who quite honestly expected their church to say, yeah, how much do you need? We'll write a check. Or, yes, we'd be happy to cover 20% of your budget. And instead they just heard, no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely being able to kind of react well to that can be a huge difference maker in the future of your relationship with your church, potential giving opportunities in the future. And I would say it starts with having a relationship to who you're talking to, whether that's the pastor, a key person on the mission board, actually basing it still on a one-to-one relationship instead of the conglomerate church. That changes the conversation. So it's not just a committee telling you, oh, no, we as the group can't do this. Instead, you can further this conversation with this person saying, okay, the church, like why? It's a great place to start is this something that you just don't have the finances? Is it your vision for missions is focused in a different area?
Oh, that's so big. I just want to go back to that. I know this is an audio thing, but if this was visual, I would say underline the word why, bold it, italicize it, highlight it, but graciously ask why. Because there could potentially be a whole host of reasons, some of which might not be within your control in any way, shape, or form. Some you might have direct ability to address.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's what I've seen is people get so nervous that first negative reaction causes them to pull completely back, throw in the towel and say goodbye.
Yeah.
Versus being able to have that conversation continue and say, help me understand. I want to understand where you're coming from. Yep. And if your vision is partnership, it's more than just that initial yes or no. It goes so much bigger.
Right. And so really what you're talking about there is humbly seeking perspective.
Ooh, yes.
See it from their angle. Why are they telling you no? And also realize the odds are pretty high. They're not saying like, no, ha, 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 ha. They're probably having a hard time saying no. So by you being gentle and loving and going, oh, wow. So that's not what I was expecting. And still like you, love you, think you're cool. I love Jesus. So do you. But could you tell me more? Like what's going on behind that? Or however you would say. I don't expect people to say things the way I say them necessarily, but certainly there needs to be a humility in response.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the reasons you've heard where churches have said no, by the way? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, I guess some of my personal experiences was no because I was not considered a full member.
Okay.
Just due to the age when I attended that church.
Okay.
No, because my ministry did not align with their giving.
Okay.
No, because they had never sent a missionary before and they had no concept of how to do that.
Wow.
It was, well...
That's kind of heartbreaking.
it was a church of missionaries. And so the idea that they would send someone out and give to someone from their body was a new concept.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. Which was very interesting.
You challenged their theology. I like it.
Yeah. And I think this is one of my failures in communicating well and kind of how the church dropped the ball a little bit. I dropped the ball a lot. No, because they had no idea I'd asked. As in, the person I was communicating with that I had been told was the advocate I should be working with, loved to talk with me, loved to hear about my vision, and never actually talked to the church.
Oh, wow. So the responsible party was rather irresponsible and you were left in the lurch.
And
wow.
I didn't realize that.
Oh,
so here
hard.
I am thinking that I'm communicating wonderfully.
Right. Yeah.
And after a couple of years, it gets back to me of, so like when you send this email asking like the church, what did you mean?
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. So I was told no. More than once, but one particular church I was told no once, and it shocked me. I mean, it was one of those count to 10 before you respond kind of things, because first of all, I don't know that I was ready to hear no, and also because I think I might have had a little bit of an arrogance to me that they owed it to me. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's probably where I was. In fact, I would say I was wrong, but that's where I was. And why did they owe it to me? Well, I had helped plant that church. Ooh. I had helped been their first youth director. I had literally bled in that church, putting up their walls years before. So, like, I had ownership in this church big time, and so when it came time to, several years later, and I felt the call and that was really, meant I needed to raise my support team, and I asked them, I just assumed their answer wasn't going to be no, it was just going to be, how much do you need? Yeah. You put everything into us, now it's our turn to help. And that was not their response at all. And so I was probably pretty immature, to be quite honest. And I just assumed they would join my team. And I had to take a beat and breathe and not respond that day. But I remember just feeling a wealth of emotions. Not all of them were good, about how could they do this to me. It just felt really unfair. And by God's grace, I had learned it's better to kind of think and pray and sleep and stuff like that before you respond.
Let the dust settle.
Yeah. And boy, it's amazing how many times that saved me and how many other times it would have saved me had I listened to it. But anyway, I did get a chance to go back and was able to somewhat humbly kind of sit down with someone and say, I'm just looking for some better understanding. You guys really surprised me with just saying no. Could I inquire just as to kind of what went into that process so that I can learn? And I really thought, it was going to be like, well, Aaron, remember this time you went to
the list,
a rated R movie when you were 18, or I don't know, who knows? I was kind of waiting for that list. And they went, no, we're sorry. No, we didn't mean no. We meant not right now. We don't look at budget stuff until October. It's May.
Oh, my word.
And that was it. That was it. And I had all these emotions. I was all wrapped up into, I've been serving these people for years. And honestly, it was, I'm thankful for it now because it was a learning opportunity. But that made me realize some things that the no has got information behind it.
Oh, yeah.
And you need to seek that out.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, I learned a handful of other things, like the fact that most churches have a formal application process.
Yes.
And you need to figure out what it is.
When they set their budget.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And what their form looks like and how much time it's going to take to fill it out. I've seen 2-page forms. I've seen forms that could have constituted small books.
Oof.
There's a lot. So you need to know what a formal application process is. You need to know about the timing. They might only accept stuff once a year.
Yeah.
They might have Great Commission pursuits that are separate of what yours is. And that doesn't mean they're wrong. It might not fit what you're wanting, and it kind of might sting because you might be wanting to serve the orphans in Thailand. And they're just wanting to focus on college ministries in the United States. You just don't know. And so figuring all that stuff out and the focus of their Great Commission pursuits is big. But one of the things, too, that I would just kind of throw in here is find out if it is a no, is there openness to reapplying down the road?
Yeah.
Figuring out what it might be. Like in my case, it was like, wait 4 months. For most people, it might be like, we'd like to see this or that. And I know I've ran into people that their church has said, we'd like to see more maturity in you first.
Sure.
We don't think you're ready. We love you. We don't think you're ready yet. And I had one guy who reached back out to me after his conversation that was similar to this. And he said, they basically pointed out to me some immaturities and they were right on. That doesn't mean I'm not called to do what I need to do, but quite honestly, I need to mature a little bit. I need some better spiritual disciplines in my life. I need to just kind of wait a year or so and maybe try again. Now, obviously, you and I aren't suggesting that's necessarily true of every person listening to this,
right?
But it does point out that a simple "hey, no" that you hear from a church, it's not the end of the road, so to speak.
Absolutely. And it's something that one of the ways I've been blessed with churches that have not committed on any recurring basis, as they've had excess in their budget, they've given to the missionaries that they're connected with. And that's included me. And it was unanticipated, unexpected, unannounced.
Okay.
But they felt that God had given them this excess to bless the people that were out doing missions that they couldn't normally support for various reasons. And because I had still continued that relationship, continued that partnership by communicating well and involving in whatever ways I could.
Right.
I was on that list.
Yeah. If you're enjoying these podcasts and they're hitting on topics that you love, consider following Support Raising Solutions on social media for everyday biblical and practical support raising advice as you're in the process of raising your support. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/supportraisingsolutions and on Twitter at supportraising. All right, so I want to, the last few minutes that we have with this podcast, I want to throw a curveball at you.
Oh, boy.
And again, we didn't pre-rehearse any of this. I just like messing with Callie. We had an interesting one. We've actually had this happen at our public boot camps more than once, where someone said, wait a minute, my church said yes, but it came with major strings.
Ooh.
And the strings are all over the map. But I'll tell you one of the more extreme ones is there's a lady who said, my church said yes, they will support me for $50 a month. However, I may not ask anybody else in the church for support also. I feel like they just tied both of my hands and one of my feet behind my back and said, God bless, go raise your support. What am I supposed to do? Hopefully there's no one else in the world that has had this sort of thing happen. And yet I know better because God allows me to kind of interact with a lot of ministry leaders. And so I hear some kind of heartbreaking stories like this sometimes that there's not an easy answer to. So I know I'm putting you on the spot, but with that being said, how would you counsel someone that the answers behind why the answer was a no, or the answers behind, yeah, we're going to support you, but this, but that, but this, but that, but this, but that, but this, but that. What do you tell someone that realizes I'm not in a very good church situation here when it comes to partnership in the Great Commission?
Well, I think the first thing is just walking into that situation with an awareness that your church is not your easy answer to support.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be the one perfect, they're going to support everything, and I don't need to do anything else. That might be that one exceptional person somewhere that I've never met, but that's probably not going to be you. And so realizing that your church is hopefully going to partner with you, but it's going to be one of many partners. So if you are put in the rock of the hard place of, first of all, if they are putting up barriers between you asking other people as a condition of their support, you already needed to ask other people.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
My initial answer would be, ask if they didn't support you, if you could talk to their members then. Right.
I could see that. Okay. Yeah, I know somebody suggested to this lady, because there was more than one person in the room that heard. And there was some, and by the way, I'm not saying any of these are the right answers, but I was hearing a lot of different answers from people going, you need to leave that church, to other people going, tell them they can keep their $50 and you can ask anybody you want, to, I think there was a different couple that kind of pulled her aside and said, are there some other things going on in that church that are kind of over the top, maybe a little controlling? Because we actually had to step away from a church similar to that. And actually, I was really thankful. I think there was a couple that kind of took her under their wing and they went off to the side and they talked for like hours after the boot camp. Wow. So yeah, because I was like, I don't know if I can answer everything this lady has going on here. But I guess the thing that I wanted to just kind of touch on is, what do you do if you are in a difficult church situation when it comes to your support raising? Now what? Any final thoughts in that regard?
I would say my first comment would be to approach your church leadership with respect and humility. There might be a lot of wise reasonings behind the barriers that you're seeing. There might not be. And so definitely walk with that with discernment and wisdom, but don't just dismiss any resistance you have from the church.
Absolutely not. Yeah. But probably seek out where that disconnect is.
Yes.
Really be able to own that.
We'll pursue that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And, did you communicate clearly enough?
Yeah.
Have they communicated and you weren't listening? Are you kind of need to rethink? But also, are you able to connect the church's vision to what you're doing? Do they care about what you care about? And if not, is that likely to change?
Right.
These are some great questions that we don't have easy answers for everybody, but you might want to understand that what the church's leadership is passionate about. If that's not a good fit with what you're passionate about, they're probably not going to join your support team anytime soon. And that might not be the thing that you're just trying to wait it out, because there are other opportunities more than likely to raise up a support team. And we do want people to be healthy and people that need to get counseling. We think counseling is a good word. We think Financial Peace University is a good word. And we know there's others out there, Crime Financial. I'm not going to go through all of them. Like, there's a lot of good things that people can do to be spiritually healthy and emotionally healthy and all that kind of stuff. But I guess the point is we don't want people to put all their eggs in the basket of, oh no, this one church won't partner with me. I must be disqualified from ministry. So that's just not where we want people to be. We want people to seek the Lord first, be in prayer and be wise and ask good questions.
Yes. And also don't assume you're going to have a terrible reaction from your church.
Oh, no. Wow. We did kind of do that. I apologize to all the churches out there that make we are pro-church. I just want to remind everybody of that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, and I've just seen actually some incredible interactions from churches of, we can't give to you, but, we'd actually recommend this other church that we partner with. They would be totally on board with this vision. Let's connect you to them. And so there are some amazing things that can come out of churches. Yeah. Even if it's they themselves can't give financially. Yep.
And let me close this up with one more good example too. A church that told me kind of a no for now, so to speak, at one point, less than a year later, blessed me with the finances for a need I had. It was a brand new computer.
Oh, wow.
And so they might not have joined my monthly team, which we encourage people to raise up their monthly team. It's your bread and butter. But I really needed a computer. In fact, the computer that's sitting here on the table between Callie and I, we're sitting here talking, is the computer that they funded. So I'm super thankful. So anyway, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the podcast. Callie, thanks again for joining me today.
Happy to be here with all your curveballs.
And we will plan to continue to put out a podcast every week as we just try and lean into this topic and encourage everybody to be spiritually healthy, vision-driven, and fully funded. Thanks for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear your ideas for future content. Please visit supportraisinSolutions.org/feedback to share your thoughts and questions. Also, wherever you download your podcasts from, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and come back each week to gain more insight into the process of building and maintaining your personal support team.